Hello everybody and welcome to the 8th video in our series of videos on peace and war in Europe between 1920 and 1945. Today we are going to be looking at Adolf Hitler's foreign policy and the drift towards war breaking out in Europe and the beginning of World War II. As always, we begin with our learning outcomes. So by the end of this presentation, you guys should know Hitler's foreign policy aims, when he came to power, and how Britain and France reacted to Hitler enacting these aims. Second, you guys should know the steps that Hitler took to dismantle the Treaty of Versailles. And third, you guys should be able to describe the aggressive policy that Hitler pursued, the steps on this aggressive policy that led to war breaking out in Europe. So we begin with Hitler's foreign policy. We already touched on his foreign policy aims, but just to clarify what they were. First, he wanted to destroy the Treaty of Versailles. Second, he wanted to create a German-speaking empire by uniting all German-speaking people into this Greater Germany, or Großdeutschland, as it was known. And his final policy was he wanted to acquire living space, known as Lebensraum, for his new German empire by invading Eastern Europe. Hitler had his first major foreign policy success when a plebiscite or a vote was held in this area here known as the SAAR region. This had been under French control for the past 15 years. After 15 years, they were allowed to have a vote to see if they wanted to stay under French control or rejoin Germany. And in 1934, they voted to rejoin Germany. Hitler then openly started destroying the Treaty of Versailles. He introduced conscription, and this broke the limit of 100,000 soldiers set by the treaty. He said that he was going to build the army back up to 500,000 men. He also talked about how he was going to rebuild an air force. With the introduction of conscription, he also signed an agreement with Britain that he would be allowed to build a limited number of battleships and also an unlimited amount of submarines. So he was able to reconstruct a navy also. The next thing he did was he sent troops into the Rhineland. So under the treaty, no troops were allowed within 50 kilometers east of the Rhineland. But Hitler sent in troops in 1936 with instructions that if they met any resistance that they were to retreat. There was no resistance and he faced no consequences for this. So then the Rhineland was remilitarized by Hitler in 1936. The next crucial step in Hitler's foreign policy was the alliance that he formed with Mussolini. We might think that they were naturally attracted to each other, but as two big egos, initially they weren't. So initially in 1934, Mussolini and Hitler had clashed over Austria. Germany had used propaganda to try to advocate for the unification of Austria and Germany, which is known as the Anschluss. And remember, this had been another thing that the Treaty of Versailles had said that was not to happen. However, Mussolini had supposed this Anschluss because he feared that Italy would lose territory in the unification of Germany and Austria. However, after that, relations began to improve. Germany gave support to Italy in their invasion of Abyssinia in 1935. And then they both supported the fascist dictator General Franco in the Spanish Civil War in 1936. It was during the Civil War that Germany started to perfect the blitzkrieg technique that we will look at in the beginning of World War II. The Spanish Civil War was a real seminal point in European history. It was seen as a battle between communists and fascists, with Mussolini and particularly Germany being decisive in the fascist Franco winning the war, which ended in 1939. In 1936, the Rome-Berlin axis, which was this unofficial kind of coalition between Italy and Germany, how they said they had some of the same policies, nothing was signed, but it was this kind of alliance was formed between the two of them. Then in 1937, Italy joined the anti-Comintern or anti-communist pact that had been set up by Japan and Germany in 1936. So with the alliance with Italy now secured, Germany moved to complete the union of Germany with Austria, known as the Anschluss. Like I said, this had been forbidden by the Treaty of Versailles, but it was part of Hitler's vision of that Großdeutschland, or that Greater Germany. So in March of 1938, Hitler marched into Austria to stop a vote, or he sent in SS troops, into Austria to stop a vote on whether Austria should unite with Germany. He feared that the Austrian leader Schuschnigg would cheat and make sure that Austria stayed independent. So Hitler then forced him to appoint a Nazi chancellor in Austria who ensured that the bill to unify with Germany would pass. And in April 1934, Austria and Germany unified into one nation. In October of 1938, Hitler took his next step when he invaded the German-speaking region of Czechoslovakia known as the Sudetenland. So approximately 3 million Germans lived in this area, and Hitler had been pushing for the Sudetenland to become independent from Czechoslovakia for about 6 months prior to his annexation of the region. The Czechs resisted it because it was a crucial part of their economy. So in September of 1938, the Munich conference is called to try to resolve this issue, and Hitler and Mussolini met with British Prime Minister of the day Neville Chamberlain and the French leader Daladier to discuss the issue. Now, Britain had adopted a policy known as appeasement. They believed that if they gave Hitler what he wanted, they could prevent war. Many believed that Germany had been treated too harshly in the Treaty of Versailles, and the demands put upon them were unreasonable. So they agreed at the Munich Conference to allow Germany to annex the German-speaking Sudetenland. Chamberlain famously arrived back in Britain with a piece of paper claiming that he'd secured peace in our time. However, Hitler then went back on his word and invaded the rest of Czechoslovakia in March of 1939 under no pretenses of any German-speaking people there. It was just to extend his Lebensraum. So Britain and France now realised that appeasement wouldn't work, and they made an agreement with Poland that if any of them were attacked or invaded, they would come to each other's aid. Then in August of 1939, Hitler shocked the world when he signed the Nazi-Soviet non-aggression pact with the communist USSR. Remember, Hitler was severely anti-communist, but so no one saw this alliance coming. Stalin had been pushing for an alliance with Britain and France and Poland, but none of them would entertain dealing with a communist country. So Stalin and Hitler then reached out to each other. They said that they wouldn't fight against each other for 10 years, and they secretly agreed to divide Poland between each other. Hitler then sent an ultimatum to Poland a week later to surrender the Polish corridor, which the Polish government refused. The Polish corridor had been given to them during the Treaty of Versailles negotiations, and so a week after the non-aggression pact was signed, on the 1st of September 1939, Germany invaded Poland. Britain and France declared war 2 days later on the 3rd of September, and World War II had erupted in Europe. That brings us to the end of our presentation. So by now you guys should know Hitler's foreign policy aims when he came to power and how Britain and France reacted. Britain, of course, used that policy of appeasement. Second, you guys should know the steps that Hitler took to dismantle the Treaty of Versailles. And third, you guys should be able to describe the aggressive policy, so the steps that Hitler pursued that resulted in war breaking out. So from the Sudetenland to the invasion of Czechoslovakia to the Soviet non-aggression pact. Thanks for watching. Hope you guys got something good from this video.